Welcome back to Doc Tickers. Usually we're knee-deep in earnings calls, but today we're going to do something a little different.
Yeah, a little change of pace.
Right. Some breaking news just dropped that has the digital freight brokerage world buzzing.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting stuff.
So Fura, you know them, Texas-based digital freight broker, just announced they're acquiring Pinwheel Logistics.
Wow.
And get this, it's their third acquisition in the sector this year.
In this market.
Yeah. So this is kind of a big deal for a couple of reasons.
Definitely.
First, could be a sign of more consolidation to come in a market that's been kind of, struggling.
Makes sense.
And second, Fura is doing this their own way.
How so?
They're not afraid of companies with negative EBITDA.
That's not the usual approach, is it?
Nope. Raises some eyebrows for sure.
Usually you see that focus on immediate profitability.
Right.
But it seems like they're thinking long term.
Exactly. Prioritizing growth, even if it means taking on some risk. So before we get into the why, let's do a quick overview of who these companies are.
Okay, sounds good.
So Fura, they specialize in full truckload transportation. Like, those big rigs hauling everything from dry goods to refrigerated products.
Right. The backbone of the supply chain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they've built up a pretty impressive network.
Yeah, how big are we talking?
Over 550 customers and 16,000 carriers.
Wow. That's a lot of moving parts.
And they've got this platform that connects everyone.
Streamlining things, I imagine.
Yeah, providing real-time shipment visibility.
Yeah.
That's becoming really important in the logistics world.
For sure. Efficiency, better communication. Everyone's happy.
Absolutely. Now, Pinwheel Logistics, they're based in Chicago.
Okay.
And they've carved out a niche for themselves.
What's their specialty?
Food and beverage freight.
Interesting.
And that specialization is kind of key because, the food and beverage sector tends to be more stable.
Even during economic downturns?
Exactly. People got to eat right. So while other industries might see, a big drop in demand during a recession.
Food and beverage keeps chugging along.
Yep. Less susceptible to those cyclical swings.
Makes you wonder if Fura is being strategic here.
Right. Targeting these specialized brokers to build a more diversified portfolio.
Yeah, like they're assembling a dream team for the logistics world.
Exactly. Each player with their own unique expertise.
And don't forget Fura's CEO, Jeff D'Angelo.
Oh, yeah, he's got that tech background.
Right, co-founded Turvo.
Yeah, a cloud-based platform for transportation management.
So he's probably seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. The potential for technology to revolutionize this whole industry.
It's not just about moving boxes anymore.
Right. It's about data, optimization, the whole 9 yards.
Now let's talk about their acquisition approach.
Yeah, it's unconventional to say the least.
Definitely.
So they're going after companies with a proven track record.
How do they define that?
At least $10 million in revenue and 5 years in operation.
Okay, so they're not messing around with startups.
Right. They want established players.
Makes sense.
But here's the twist.
What's that?
They're not scared off by negative EBITDA.
Interesting.
It's almost like they're saying, we see the potential.
Yeah, we're willing to invest even if the financials aren't perfect right now.
Exactly. It's a bold strategy, especially in this market.
Definitely a long-term play.
So what exactly is Pinwheel bringing to the table?
Well, besides that expertise in food and beverage freight.
Yeah, their co-founder sees this as an opportunity.
An opportunity to do what?
Leverage Fura's technology platform.
To expand their market reach.
Exactly. Classic win-win.
Pinwheel gets access to a wider customer base.
And Fura gains that specialized knowledge.
In a stable and growing sector.
Combine those forces, and you've got a potential powerhouse.
In the food and beverage logistics game,
Now let's zoom out a bit.
look at the bigger picture.
This acquisition isn't happening in a vacuum.
Right. There's a context here.
We're seeing more and more consolidation in the digital freight brokerage space.
The little guys are feeling the pressure.
Yeah, they're facing this increasing need to adopt technology.
To stay competitive.
And companies like Fura, with their resources and tech-focused approach.
They're in a prime position to capitalize on that.
It's like what we've seen in other industries disrupted by technology.
The old way of doing things just doesn't cut it anymore.
Adapt or die, right?
Pretty much.
And as this consolidation wave keeps rolling
We're likely to see some shifts in the balance of power.
between brokers and carriers.
Definitely raises some questions.
About transparency, fair pricing, the whole dynamic of the trucking industry.
Yeah, lots to unpack there.
But before we get into all that,
What? You got something else in mind?
let's have some fun.
I'm always up for a good time.
It's time for our favorite segment.
This is not financial advice.
Just to be crystal clear, this is all hypothetical.
purely for entertainment.
We are not financial advisors.
Don't come knocking on our door if things go south.
So please don't base your investment decisions on our wild speculations.
We're just playing around here, folks.
Okay, ready for the play.
Hit me with it.
Imagine Fura's strategy is a home run.
They keep gobbling up these specialized brokers.
Become a major player in the digital freight brokerage world.
Okay, I'm following.
But to handle all that extra volume, they're going to need capacity, right?
Makes sense.
So what if we buy call options on a publicly traded refrigerated trucking company?
Like, give me a ticker.
Sure. Let's say insert ticker, one that services the food and beverage industry.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Fura expands in that sector. They need more refrigerated trucks.
More demand equals higher prices.
Exactly. Could be a nice boost for companies like insert ticker.
But why stop there?
Right. Let's get crazy.
I like where your head's at.
What if at the same time we buy put options?
On what?
A basket of smaller publicly traded freight brokers.
Give me some tickers.
Companies like insert tickers, for example.
Okay, so you're thinking as Fura grows,
Those smaller players get squeezed.
their valuations take a hit.
Exactly. We're playing both sides of the field.
Betting on the consolidation wave.
Precisely. But of course, tons of risks involved.
Like, what if Fura stumbles?
Or the regulatory landscape goes haywire.
Or the trucking market stays in the dumps.
And don't forget about competition.
Yeah, the big dogs aren't going to just roll over.
So many things could go wrong.
But that's the fun of speculation, right?
Exactly. Exploring the possibilities. But remember, this is purely hypothetical.
Just a thought experiment.
Do your own research, consult with a professional, and always invest responsibly.
Sound advice.
Now let's shift gears and take a closer look at what this all means for the trucking industry as a whole.
The wider implications of this deal.
We'll be back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Welcome back to Talk Tickers.
So before the break, we were talking about Fura's acquisition strategy.
And how it might impact the relationship between brokers and carriers.
Right. It's a tricky situation.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance for sure.
Now, for our listeners who maybe aren't, super familiar with the trucking world,
Right, not everyone's a logistics nerd like us.
let's break down this whole broker-carrier thing.
Yeah, good idea.
So imagine you're a company. You need to move some goods.
Could be a manufacturer, a retailer, anyone really.
Right. Anyone who needs to get their products from point A to point B.
Those are the shippers.
And then on the other side, you've got the carriers,
The trucking companies with the trucks and the drivers.
the ones actually doing the hauling.
Right.
So where do brokers fit in?
Brokers are like the middlemen.
The matchmakers of the freight world.
Exactly. They connect shippers with carriers.
Find the right truck for the load, negotiate rates, handle the paperwork,
All that good stuff.
keep things moving smoothly.
And traditionally, this was all very manual.
Lots of phone calls, faxes back and forth.
Real headaches sometimes.
But now with these digital platforms popping up,
Things are changing fast.
automating a lot of those old processes
Making things more efficient in theory.
and more transparent.
Which sounds great, right?
Yeah, who doesn't like efficiency?
Potentially lower costs, too.
But like with any big tech disruption,
There are always some potential downsides.
especially for those who haven't adapted.
Right.
And one of the biggest worries for carriers is this.
What's that?
These platforms could lead to a race to the bottom on pricing.
How so?
Think about it. You've got hundreds, maybe thousands of carriers all competing for loads on one platform.
Creates a lot of downward pressure.
Everyone undercutting each other to get the business.
Classic supply and demand.
And in a down market like we're seeing now,
That pressure just gets amplified.
less freight to go around.
It's tough, especially for smaller carriers.
They've got less negotiating power and thinner margins to begin with.
Right. They're already operating on a tightrope.
And then there's the issue of data transparency.
Oh, yeah? That's a big one.
These platforms are gathering tons of data about carriers.
Their routes, their rates, their capacity.
And some carriers worry that data could be used against them.
In negotiations.
Imagine this. A broker knows a carrier is desperate for a load.
Maybe they're in a financial bind or have a truck sitting idle,
The broker could lowball them on the rate.
knowing they're more likely to take it out of desperation.
Exactly. It's a power dynamic that some carriers are nervous about.
Yeah, it highlights that tension.
Between the potential benefits of these platforms
Like you said, greater efficiency, access to a wider market,
and the potential risks.
price erosion, loss of control over their data.
It's a tough spot to be in.
And as these platforms get even more sophisticated,
Using algorithms and AI to optimize everything.
the role of the traditional broker might start to change.
Yeah, we might see algorithms doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
Matching loads with carriers based on all sorts of factors.
To lead to even greater efficiency,
But it also raises some ethical questions.
about fairness, transparency bias in those
It's
algorithms.
a whole new world we're stepping into.
And we're still figuring out the rules.
So how do you see Fura navigating all of this?
As they grow and consolidate the market.
Especially with these concerns about brokers and carriers,
Well, it's a tightrope walk, for sure.
they need to use technology to drive growth.
But they also need to make sure they're not alienating carriers.
Right.
They have to show they're committed to fair pricing.
Data transparency, building those long-term relationships.
Like they're building a bridge between the old way of doing
And
things.
this new digital frontier.
And that bridge needs to be strong.
Because their ambitions are pretty big.
They need to earn the trust of shippers and carriers.
Show everyone that their platform is beneficial for all parties involved.
And let's not forget about regulation.
Ah, yes, the regulator.
As these platforms become more common,
Regulators are going to start paying attention.
they're always a few steps behind.
But they'll catch up eventually.
So where do you think they'll focus their attention?
Pricing transparency is a big one.
Making sure brokers aren't being shady.
Hiding pricing information, taking advantage of carriers.
Leveling the playing field.
Ensuring fair competition.
What else?
Carrier safety is another major concern.
Making sure brokers aren't pushing carriers to do unsafe things.
Like exceeding driving hour limits or hauling dangerous cargo.
Protecting drivers and the public.
Absolutely. Safety should always be the top priority.
Anything else on their radar?
Data privacy.
All that data these platforms are collecting,
Regulators want to make sure it's handled responsibly.
protected from misuse.
Finding that balance between efficiency and privacy.
So it's a whole web of regulations that Fura is going to have to navigate.
Both existing ones and new ones that are probably coming down the pipeline.
And, regulation can sometimes stifle innovation,
That's true.
but it can also create opportunities.
How so?
Imagine the digital freight brokerage space becomes heavily regulated.
Okay.
Some companies might struggle to adapt,
Right.
but if Fura can position themselves as a leader in compliance,
A company that's already operating transparently and ethically,
it could give them a real edge.
like a seal of approval from the government.
Really good guys. Trust us.
Attract shippers and carriers who want a reliable and compliant partner.
Smart strategy if they can pull it off.
It all comes down to trust and credibility.
But remember, Fura is not operating in a vacuum.
They're part of a much bigger ecosystem,
The whole trucking industry is going through this massive transformation,
a technological revolution.
and the implications are huge.
So before we wrap up this deep dive,
Let's take a step back and think about the big picture.
what does the future of trucking look like in this digital age?
What trends should we be watching?
What challenges are lying ahead?
And most importantly,
What does it all mean for investors?
stay tuned as we explore those questions and more in our final segment. Welcome back to Talk Tickers. We've been digging into this Fura Pinwheel deal.
Yeah, and it's really got us thinking.
Definitely goes way beyond just two companies, merging.
It's like a peek into the future of the whole trucking industry.
Before we get too philosophical, though,
Right, always got to bring it back to reality.
I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier.
What's that?
This idea that regulations could actually be good for companies like Fura.
Right. Right now, it's kind of like the Wild West out there.
New players popping up all over the place.
Rules of the game are still being written.
But as regulators start cracking down,
The companies that are already playing by the rules,
they're going to have a leg up.
they'll be ready to go while everyone else is scrambling to catch up.
Exactly. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of Fura's strategy,
What do you mean?
acquiring these well-run, compliant companies.
Yeah, not just about market share and expertise.
They're also reducing their risk down the line.
When those regulations inevitably kick in.
It's like they're building this fortress of compliance.
Brick by brick.
They'll be ready for whatever the regulators throw at them.
Smart move.
So let's play this out.
Okay.
Say Fura's plan works perfectly.
They become the king of the hill in digital freight brokerage,
They handle the regulations like champs.
and they keep those carriers happy.
What does the end game look like?
What's the future of trucking in this scenario?
Well, I think one thing's for sure,
What's that?
it's going to be all about technology.
Yeah, these platforms are only going to get more advanced.
Artificial intelligence, machine learning, all that jazz.
Optimizing every step of the supply chain.
Imagine AI matching loads.
Predicting demand fluctuations.
Self-driving trucks cruising down the highway.
It's all possible. And the companies that can handle all that data,
Collect it, analyze it, use it effectively.
they'll be the ones calling the shots.
Optimize routes, cut down on fuel waste.
Deliver goods faster and cheaper.
It's survival of the fittest.
The data-driven fittest.
But this whole digital revolution,
It brings up some big questions.
what happens to truck drivers?
Are the algorithms going to be fair?
What about the environment?
Can we make trucking more sustainable as it evolves?
Tough questions. No easy answers.
Trucking is a huge part of our economy.
And as it changes, we got to be careful.
Think about the workers, the communities, the planet.
It's a balancing act.
We want the efficiency, but we don't want to leave people behind.
We need to make sure everyone benefits from this progress.
And speaking of progress,
It's time for This Is Not Financial Advice.
a glove, folks.
Just a friendly reminder, this is all hypothetical.
Purely for entertainment.
We are not financial advisors.
So don't blame us if your portfolio tanks.
Okay, ready for a thought experiment.
Hit me.
What if we're about to see a major shift in how goods are transported?
Okay, I'm intrigued.
What if instead of these long-haul trucks?
We see a rise of regional distribution centers.
Exactly. Imagine smaller warehouses closer to the customers,
Goods shipped in bulk to these hubs.
and then smaller vehicles handle the last mile delivery.
So kind of like a hub and spoke model, but for trucking.
Driven by e-commerce, faster delivery times, maybe even autonomous vehicles for those shorter routes.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
So how do we turn this into a crazy trade?
Give me the play.
Go long on companies that specialize in warehouse automation.
And last mile delivery solutions.
Companies like Insert Ticker or Insert Ticker,
If this regional hub thing takes off,
demand for their services would explode.
it's a gamble for sure.
What if it doesn't work out?
What if long-haul trucking stays on top?
What if Amazon just builds its own network?
And the regulations could be a nightmare.
Zoning permits community pushback. And who knows what kind of crazy new technology might come along.
So many things could go wrong.
But that's what makes it fun to think about, right?
Exploring the possibilities, pushing the boundaries.
And hey, maybe one of our crazy ideas will actually come true.
You never know.
So there you have it, folks, another deep dive into the world of trucking.
This time, inspired by Fura and Pinwheel Logistics.
We covered a lot of ground.
From the deal itself to the big trends shaping the industry,
We talked about the challenges and opportunities of technology,
the relationship between brokers and carriers.
the regulatory landscape, and even some wild trade ideas.
But remember, those are just for fun.
Do your own research, talk to a financial advisor.
And never forget, investing involves risk.
Thanks for joining us in Talk Tickers.
Until next time, happy investing. That